Welcome back to Colts Law. I'm Lawrence Owen. With me, as usual, is my guy, Colts Loyalist. And today we continue our general AFC breakdown as we continue through the North with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Tony, what's going on, my guy? Why don't you, since this is mostly a Colts channel, a lot of people may not know much about you. Why don't you give a little bit of information about yourself, where they can find you?
Yeah, Tony Serino I am currently with a YouTube show called AFC North Talk. It is a roundtable show all about the AFC North. So there's four of us. I represent the Pittsburgh Steelers on that show. I used to be the host or the co-host of Locked On Steelers. I now make basically a weekly appearance on that show. And you can follow me on Steeler Country on Twitter. But I'm excited to talk Steelers with you today.
Absolutely, man. I love so far everyone that I brought on have been absolutely fantastically knowledgeable, and I am fully expecting that from you. So I'm setting the bar high, guy.
All right. Well, I don't know. Well, maybe I've made a couple mistakes in a couple.
All right. So let's go ahead and start off with the depth chart. We're going to break that down first and foremost.
Sure.
So there is some changes. Obviously, this past offseason with the Pittsburgh Steelers, namely coming at quarterback. Obviously, a former quarterback's no longer there. That's been the perennial guy for like 2 decades, right?
It's going to be a weird season to be a Steeler fan. Yeah, because, it's 18 years of Ben Roethlisberger, and now here we are. We are officially in a post-Ben Roethlisberger era in Pittsburgh. Yeah, and so – and the interesting thing about it going forward is that they don't have anybody in there now who you would say is the entrenched starter, right? I don't think anybody today could tell you, who the starter is going to be on opening day. Certainly, everybody has their opinion. I have my own. I think it's going to be Mitch Trubisky, but it could be any of those three. I look, it's going to be Mitch versus Kenny in camp, and that's going to be the storylines. I guess we shouldn't rule out Mason Rudolph because technically speaking, in the room, he is the most experienced when it comes to. He knows the offense. He's been there. He knows all the guys. He's started multiple games. He started a game last year for the Steelers. Now, do I think he realistically has a chance to win? Probably not. But I guess we keep his name in mind there. But yeah, Kenny Pickett versus Mitch Trubisky is going to make this training camp, this preseason, really, really interesting.
Absolutely. I want to start off with that draft pick, that first round draft pick, Kenny Pickett. The only quarterback to be picked in the first round. Give us a little bit of information about this young man.
Yeah, for those of you who watched me on AFC North Talk, we did a live show during that, and I'm not a Kenny Pickett guy. So when they took Kenny Pickett, the reaction there from my co-hosts were very, very excited because they all believe Kenny Pickett's going to be a massive bust. I'm not there with him. Look, Kenny Pickett as a prospect, he doesn't excite me at all. He actually scares me, not because I think he's going to be a bust. Right, like I've outlined this before, but to me there are three possibilities when you draft a quarterback. Right, you can get a bust. It's very easy for us to we've seen them all. Right, they come in, nope, that guy's not the guy, and you move along. Right, you can also get a guy who's easily a franchise quarterback. Right, we've seen a bunch of those over the past couple of years: Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert. Right, then there's the guy in the middle, and that's the one that really needs to worry you because that's the one where you can convince yourself, you know what? Maybe he could be a franchise guy, right? And maybe if we put the right pieces around him, right now, San Francisco dealt with that with Jimmy Garoppolo, right? They convinced themselves for a little while, oh no, we can win a Super Bowl with this guy. And they got pretty close, but not quite. I think Derek Carr is another guy like that, right? He's got Baker Mayfield easily was a guy like that for a little while. That's why I worry Kenny Pickett could be. Look, Kenny Pickett is a very, very accurate quarterback. That's the one trait about him that I think you cannot downplay. He is extremely, extremely accurate. But the rest of his game, when it comes to arm strength, when it comes to, his general mobility, when you look for it in the modern game, I don't know that he really possesses the traits that you think this guy could become a top 5 quarterback, right? I mean, I think the Steelers unfortunately drafted a guy who has the ceiling of like an Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton was a fine quarterback for a little while, but everybody outside of Cincinnati knew you're not going anywhere with Andy Dalton. And that's for me, kind of the worry with Kenny. The Steelers loved him a lot, though. The front office loved Kenny Pickett a lot. That's why they drafted him at 22. In fact, they actually tried to move up in the draft. They actually tried to get into the teens, tried to trade with the Houston Texans. So they clearly like him a lot. And if they like him, I guess, who am I to sit here and doubt Mike Tomlin? doubt Kevin Colbert and what they've done over the past 15 years. If they like Kenny, I'll go along with it, but I certainly have my concerns.
Yeah, and the thing with Kenny is, he's that hometown hero. He's that, he came out of Pitt. So like you said, is that going to give him a longer leash, or do you think that that's going to, give actually Trubisky a shorter leash, and because everybody's going to be clamoring right out of the gate to see the Pittsburgh product?
It's interesting, yes. It's how much of it is like, hey, this kid, he needs to start right away. Especially when you consider the fact that he's pretty old for a rookie, right? I mean, he's going to be 24 going on 25. He played 5. He's one of these super seniors in college. He played 5 years of college. He had a massive year-over-year leap going into his his super senior year, where his play really did explode. And so you do kind of expect early on that he should start. I think the one thing that's going to stop him though is Mike Tomlin. I think Mike Tomlin, we heard from Jay Glazer in mid-season. And by the way, Jay Glazer and Mike Tomlin are great friends. I was at training camp 3 years ago, watched them, they are best buds. They were at a bar, just yamming it up back there. So those two, like when Jay Glazer reports something about Mike Tomlin, it's not a rumor. He heard that from Mike. And he reported that Mike Tomlin wanted a veteran coming in. So I think Mike's going to go into this season thinking, we probably should start Mitch, because I think Mike still believes that this team could compete, right? I mean, I don't think Mike Tomlin believes that they're in any kind of rebuilding phase, or this is a 3-year plan or everything. Mike Tomlin's the kind of coach who goes into every season saying, who's going to give me the best chance to win a Super Bowl right now? And even though it may be in the long-term interest to get Kenny Pickett some reps, to get him out there, to build that rapport with this receiving core, because 2 or 3 years from now, you can benefit from that. I don't think Mike Tomlin's thinking that way. I think he's thinking, who gives me the best chance to win? And right now, it may be Mitch Trubisky.
So it's not just the quarterback that there's been a lot of turnover with when it comes to the passing game. I mean, we got quite a bit of wide receivers that are new.
Yep.
Whether you got them from New England or Baltimore, whether you grabbed them in the draft, you got some change around on the offensive line. Give us a name that you're hoping that will have a fantastic first season with the Steelers that would actually, you believe, really help them achieve the goals that they're shooting for.
Sure. Well, as much as I really did not like the pick of Kenny Pickett in the first round, the Steelers, they blew it away. For me, they just, exceeded my expectations in the second round when they picked George Pickens. I thought George Pickens was wide receiver 1 in this class based on the tape that I watched. I think he is exactly what I look for in a wide receiver. They have that meme going around Twitter, right? He's got the dog in him. This guy's got some dog in him, and especially when I watched, one of the things that frustrates me most about Chase Claypool as a player is that here's a guy who has the exact same measurables as a Calvin Johnson, right? I mean, you look at size, speed, athleticism, you put the two guys side by side, and, Chase Claypool could be Calvin Johnson, but he doesn't play like that, right? I mean, you look at Chase Claypool's numbers when it comes to 50-50 ball situations, when it comes to press situations. This is where he's at his worst, right? This is a guy who is physically could be a dominating player at his position, but he doesn't play like that. He plays like a small receiver. What I love about George Pickens is he's got the size, he's got the athleticism, and he's got that mentality. He's going to go out there and he's going to moss you, right? I mean, this guy who wants to go out there and physically dominate the guy that he's across. That's what I love about him. We know the Steelers have a pretty good track record when it comes to drafting receivers. I think George Pickens is probably a home run pick in this draft class, and someone who I'm really looking forward to watch.
Yeah, and the thing is, you go from Pickens, like you said, he's this big body, and then you look at Austin Kelvin, he's that blow the top off, and stuff. And I'm interested to see. First off, okay, let's say if Kenny Pickett makes a start, does he have the arm to get the ball to this, to that type of receiver down the field, in the NFL? I mean, yes, I know he did it in college, but we all know that that's a different beast in itself, But yeah, like you said, there's a great dichotomy with those two young talents, And I mean, I'm a Notre Dame guy. I like Chase Claypool, what he did at Notre Dame and stuff. But like you said, he got in the NFL and he was just a little like lost. Just like trying to find his way, either on the field and off the field.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he's all the off the field stuff that happened with Chase. He had the whole thing on TikTok where he said, he basically said after they lost to the Browns, he was reviewing the tapes like, oh, they're going to get clapped by the Chiefs and whatnot. And he got a bunch of stuff for that. Obviously, there was the whole thing last year where he did the first down signal at the end of the Vikings game when they were, hey, we're in hurry up mode, and he's out here, doing his celebration and whatnot. That stuff, that stuff wouldn't bother me as much, right? I mean, look, I watched Antonio Brown for how many years, right? I mean, Antonio Brown had plenty of on and off the field issues. He was a great player. Didn't matter, right? I mean, like, no one's sitting here going, during the peak Antonio Brown, right? We weren't talking about, well, he threw a Gatorade bottle on the sideline. Who cares? He had 1,800 yards, man. He wanted to throw 3 Gatorade bottles. That's cool with me.
Throw
so,
two, right?
So, for me, it's with Chase, it really does come down to that on the field stuff. And yeah, like you talked about, he's just he had that. There was that 8-game stretch beginning of his career where he did look like, wow, this kid, and this is another home run pick by the Steelers. It's really tailed off since then. And I think with him, he may be best off in the slot, as weird as that is to say. I mean, he may be one of these like big slots that you see in the NFL. It's weird because he's got the body size for someone who could be a dominant outside receiver, but he doesn't play that way.
So what did they do in the offseason for the offensive line? I'm just curious.
Well, they got a couple guys. They wanted to attack the interior of that offensive line. That was a massive miss for them a year ago when they drafted Kendrick Green, who was a guard out of Illinois, who they moved to center. He just, he started okay, and it kind of got worse and worse as the year went on. They say that he had an injury at the end of the year, but he got replaced at the end of the year by a guy by J.C. Hassenauer, who was just an off the street type player, and Hassenauer was much, much better than Kendrick Green at the end of the year. And that's got to be worrying, right? When you're talking about a 3rd-round pick as a center, and he's getting outplayed by, basically a guy who would be on a practice squad on another team. Okay, that's bad news. So they went out and got Mason Cole from the Vikings. They went out and got James Daniels from the Bears. These aren't like top names, right? The interesting thing about where the Steelers are right now is that because they're in this kind of pseudo rebuild type situation post Ben Roethlisberger.
Hey guys, please smash that like button, hit subscribe if you're not subscribed, and tag that notification bell so that you're notified next time I go live. Don't forget, you can also share this video to your favorite social media, and please open up that description of the video. In there you find a link to my Patreon, which is only $5 a month. You get all of my content plus Patreon specific content, and of course my merch shop right here.
I think they're in a situation where they just want to kind of figure out who are the 2 or 3 guys in this offensive line that we can build around, right? Well, because once we nail the other positions, okay, we just got to solidify the offensive line, and then this offense should be fixed, right? Think about where the Bengals were, 2 years ago or a year ago, right? They were filling holes. Then they figured out, okay, Burrow's that dude. Okay, let's go out and this year they spent buku money on that offensive line, getting every top player they could at position. So, with James Daniels, I think they got a solid player there who could play right guard. I'm less convinced about Mason Cole, but with Mason Cole, I think you're looking at a kind of a 2-dog or 3-dog, 2-bone situation, as Mike Tomlin would call it, when it comes to Kendrick Green. You have Kevin Dotson and Mason Cole. 2 of those 3 players will likely start at center and left guard, and that's going to be a competition throughout camp. And Tomlin usually has a way of bringing the best out of players in those kind of situations, right? Hey, listen, you're not going to start unless you exceed your expectations here in camp. He brings the best out of you, and we'll see what happens. But I like Dan Moore at the left side. He was the starter a year ago. They re-signed Chuks Okorafor at right tackle. Not a great player, but he's serviceable for now. And again, they're not going to have a great offensive line, but they're just looking to see what young guys can they find for the future.
Yeah, the big thing about the offensive line, I mean, that's not just pass protection. That is opening holes for Najee Harris, and he was the bell cow last year, right? And if even though he was given a lot of carries, he put the whole team on his back. If you can get him closer to the 4.5 yards per carry range rather than, the 4 yards per carry range, the Steelers are going to be a very difficult team to handle, just for the simple fact of a running game and a defense carries. And with that being said, let's go ahead and look at what the Steelers are really well known for. Okay.
Yeah.
Right now, especially, they still obviously have quite a bit of people that are there right now that have been there for a while. Hayward is still there. And Fitzpatrick, who we picked up a while back, TJ Watt, obviously scary dude. Terrell Edmonds. They had a couple pickups though in the off season plus the draft. Who's the guy that you think is going to make that biggest impact on the defense that's new this year?
It's tough because you're right. They for as much as there is massive turnover on offense, I mean, they did make some pretty big acquisitions here defensively. I mean, first of all, Miles Jack at the inside linebacker spot. That's a really intriguing pickup to go alongside Devin Bush. And maybe even, look, Devin Bush is in a contract year. They didn't pick up the 5th-year option. Devin Bush hasn't exactly lit the world on fire since that ACL tear coming back from it. So, could he be kind of the long-term option there at inside linebacker? Quite possibly. I really liked the signing of Larry Ogunjobi recently. Obviously, doing AFC North talk, I've gotten to long looks at Larry when he was in both Cleveland and Cincinnati now. It'll be interesting to see what he can do, though, because the Steelers really, what they lacked last year on the defensive line was run stopping, right? Their defensive line when it came to run defense was atrocious. Larry's been known more as a pass rushing specialist. So we'll see what he can bring there, but certainly he's going to be better than the alternatives, which were guys like, young guys like Isaiah Loudermilk or, Chris Wormley once again. And then they got Levi Wallace, the corner from Buffalo, who's this kind of just, he's not a big name, wasn't a big name on their defense. Buffalo's defense was very good a year ago. And he was, kind of a cog in the wheel, if you will. I like him a lot, though. What I like about him is he's a very Mike Tomlin player in that, he's willing to do it all, right? This is not a guy who's going to be shy about getting in there in run defense, right? He's certainly going to put his nose in the pile in those places, but it can also be a decent cover corner. Obviously, the athleticism concerns are there. He's not going to be a number one or anything like that. But I don't know. It's hard to pick one. I guess Miles Jack, you have to be the one that you're going to pick if you're going to single one guy out and say who's going to make the biggest impact. Inside linebacker was, we talk about the defensive line being bad. Inside linebacker, equally bad for the Steelers a year ago. And so Jack is someone who maybe he won't be the superstar he was in Jacksonville 3 or 4 years ago, but if he could just be a solid player on the inside, that's something the Steelers have desperately needed.
So I got a question for you. I mean, I know you guys are switching D coordinators. You brought on Flores also as an advisor, or what is it you're hoping to see from this defense that will set it aside from what you saw last year?
I think the one thing, it's going to be interesting because, they had Keith Butler as their defensive coordinator, but there was always this talk in the background that, well, yes, Keith Butler is defensive coordinator, but Mike Tomlin really runs this defense. It's Mike Tomlin's defense, and Keith Butler is there, and he'll put together game plans, but Tomlin's calling the plays. And this was a rumor for many, many years, right? A rumor, but never confirmed until the day Keith Butler retired when he went on the radio and said, yep, I didn't really call the plays. That was Mike Tomlin. He was doing all the play calling. So it sounds like Mike Tomlin's giving that up now. So now that Terrell Austin is going to be the D coordinator, that Terrell Austin will call plays, and Tomlin's going to kind of give up a little bit there, which is really, really, really interesting. I think the one thing that the Steelers need to see is more consistency when it comes to run defense, right? And that's just going to come down to, again, gap integrity, right? The kind of basics here. They were awful year. You go back and watch that Minnesota game, the Thursday night game. I mean, it didn't need to be Dalvin Cook running for 200 in that game. I mean, you or I could have run for 200 in that game with the holes that were there in that Steeler defense. So, I mean, they're going to need better gap integrity when it comes to both on the defensive line and then just, filling holes when it comes to those linebackers. I will be intrigued though. There's all this too high looks going on around the league now. Right? It's kind of the new craze. Everybody's going to too high. Seems like the Steelers might want to go to too high this year as well. That's been the rumor throughout the offseason. Everybody's going to too high. You look at the division the Steelers are in. Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson, Joe Burrow. What do we know about these three players? They like to throw the ball deep. How do you defend 3 deep? How do you defend deep ball? Maybe we go a little too high here in Pittsburgh and shut that down as well. So I'm intrigued to see kind of what kind of changes and how different this Steelers defense looks with a truly new defensive coordinator. And now that Tomlin's given up the reins potentially.
Yeah, and I want to remind everybody this isn't his first defensive coordinator job. I mean, he helped lead the Lions to one of their rare playoff things. So yeah, this isn't a young buck that's just starting to cut his teeth. This is somebody like with the Colts, that's proven and has done it in multiple places.
Yeah.
So I want to bring up one more thing about the roster, then we're going to move to the schedule. I don't see this very often. Teams don't go out on free agency very often and get themselves a punt kick returner, but they went out and got Gunnar Olszewski.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that?
Well, they needed to because it's so interesting because early in Mike Tomlin's career, he didn't prioritize this position basically at all. And like for many years, it was just, whoever the 53rd guy on the roster is, hopefully he can return kicks, right? But it never was you didn't really have the specials. I guess they had, Stephon Logan, they had the 1 year. But other than that, yeah, I mean, there really wasn't a priority until recently. They had Ray McLeod last year. he now signed with the 49ers. So it was an opening on the roster. Olszewski is a Patriot guy. So, I don't love it because I don't love the Patriots. But I guess, if he's going to wear black and gold, I guess I'll cheer for him. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that the Steelers are still, I'm glad to see that Tomlin is still prioritizing a true return man on the roster. And then we're not going to go back to the days of just, random, like Isaac Redman is returning kicks for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, what are we doing? Your third down, your short yardage back is also your kick returner. What? We're not going back there. I'm happy about that.
Well, flipping fields are very, very important. And, that's people don't put enough emphasis in special teams, and special teams is a third of your game, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's huge. So this pickup's really good. Gunner is a great special teamer. Now that we're finished with that, we are going to drop into this. And why is okay? Yeah, Google. Hello. So this 2022 NFL season, we're going to start the preseason off where you got the Seahawks come to town. Then the Steelers and Miles Jack visit the Jaguars, and they finish it off with the Lions coming to the Steelers. Is there a preseason game that's got you going, man, I'd really like to see that game for this reason?
Yeah, preseason game number one. Number one, because this is a season of uncertainty for Steeler fans, right? I mean, like, what's it gonna look like when Ben Roethlisberger is not there? We got a kind of maybe a sneak peek of it a couple years ago when they had to play Mason and Duck when Ben had the elbow injury. But like, this is truly we're entering into a new facet, and and with that also comes Matt Canada and his offense, and is it real? Are we really going to see like a truly different new offense in Pittsburgh? So maybe we won't get all the answers to that in preseason game number one, but that will be our first chance to see Trubisky in a Steeler uniform. Kenny will likely play in that one, and we'll get to see Mason Rudolph again. So, but that's, for me, obviously preseason game number one. I just want to see what this is. What's it going to look like?
Loyalist, would there be a preseason game that you'd be interested in watching?
I as long as it's not we're just going to sit all the starters. I like that week 3 game, because that Detroit team I think is going to have some of that grit and that what I associate with the Steelers a lot. Just that hard nosed, ankle biting, kneecap biting type of football. So I'd like to see what that
kneecap
game,
biting.
see what that type of preseason as far as preseasons go.
That's also a sneaky revenge game. The Steelers and Lions played a year ago, and that game ended in a tie. It was an awful, awful football game. Jared Goff was hurt. The Lions basically ran the ball every single play. Steelers turned the ball over quite a few times now. What a really silly football game. So, weird / revenge game.
We had 3 preseason games last year as well. I'm just curious. Does Tomlin run a dress rehearsal on 3 with just 3 games, or did he kind of cut that out last year?
I don't believe Ben played in any preseason games last year. I think he was the only one though, but remember, Ben was, we're talking about Ben in the last years. So, generally the starters do play a little bit, they used to. And I would imagine this preseason, every game is going to be a dress rehearsal, right? I mean, if you're going to have a legitimate open competition at quarterback, then I would imagine you have 3 quarterbacks in the running. You got 3 preseason games. That's pretty simple math, right? Yeah. One guy gets a start in every game would be my assumption, and that's what makes it more interesting about preseason game number one. Is I would assume that Trubisky's going to start because Tomlin loves his veterans. So I would assume he starts preseason game number one. But what if Kenny's having a great camp? Do they start Kenny first, right? What if Mason has a great camp? Well, that won't happen, but let's just say it did. What did he start? And it's all the intrigue going into preseason game number one.
Okay. All right. So we're going to break this up into months, basically 4 weeks at a time. And I'm going to state the games, and then you're going to give me that game of the month. All right. And for you. The first one, obviously, you're going to Cincinnati to face that Joe Burrow. Then you're going to host the Patriots. Then you're going to Cleveland. Will there be a Deshaun Watson, or will you be facing Jacoby Brissett? And then you finish off with the Jets coming into town. Of those 4 games, What's your game of the month?
It's tough because, like I said, I hate the Patriots. And just because Brady's not there anymore doesn't mean I hate them any less. I mean, well, maybe a little, but still. But also, they got that game against Cincinnati. Cincinnati has beaten up on the Steelers quite a few times in a row now. They swept them a year ago, and neither game was close. And then the year before, a game Steeler fans do not like to talk about, is that Monday night game during the weird losing streak the Steelers just decided to go on at the very end of that season. They lost to Ryan Finley on Monday Night Football. Really a pathetic showing by the Steelers. So, the Steelers are not as good a football team as Cincinnati Bengals. That's obvious. So the way that they're going to beat them, you got to surprise. It's got to be kind of the sneak attack, like you did on the Steelers beat Buffalo week 1 last year in Buffalo. This is a Steelers team a year ago. They just they weren't very good last year, but they beat Buffalo in Buffalo by kind of surprising them a little bit. They didn't blitz basically at all in that first game when they had been a team a season prior that basically blitzed every play, and so they kind of caught Josh Allen and that Bills team off guard a little bit. Could they potentially do the same thing to Cincinnati? Maybe not defensively because you're not going to catch the Bengals off guard now. They got too many weapons. But could the Steelers offensively come out with a game plan that perhaps Cincinnati doesn't see coming to sneak attack them on that one? That'll be my game of the month because that's becoming a real rivalry now. Again, as the Bengals are good and the Steelers are, we'll call them a question mark. We'll call them a question mark at this point.
All right. To finish off the first half of the season, the Steelers then go to the before mentioned Bills. Mm-hmm. Then they host Tom Brady. So they got, that's got to be awesome, right? Go play the Patriots, then play Tom Brady. And then they go to Miami, and then they finish that first half of the season off with going to Philadelphia. The first half of the season, Loyalist, circle me a game for there.
Well, I'm really curious to see what that Eagles-Steelers game looks like because, with the way they like to run the ball so heavy, but now they've got A.J. Brown, and that defense out there. And the thing is I feel like the Steelers, their defense is going to have to keep them into games and hope that their offense can score enough points. That's the way I'm seeing it this year. Like you say, you talk about Cam Hayward and T.J. Watt and so these guys have to sit there and make their presence known repeatedly, I think, all year long because, like you said, there's so many question marks. Which quarterback's going to be like? Which one is it? So for me, I think that if that defense can stifle that run game that the Eagles present, I think that could be an enjoyable game to watch.
So the second month there, Tony.
Yeah.
Which one?
Oh, Tom Brady. Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. Easily. Because Tom Brady has really had the Steelers number for many, many years. Right? I mean, this is, he feasted on a Steeler defense for so many years. I think they did beat him a couple years back. What was it, 2017 or 28? No, it was actually 2018. It was the year the Patriots would go on to beat the Rams that year. But other than that, I mean, it's really been, one-sided, this rivalry, if you want to call it that. So, but what hasn't happened is the Steelers haven't played Tom Brady since they got Minka, right? Since TJ Watt became an all-pro, right? Since this defense really became something that you do respect. And so I'm intrigued. That's what I want to watch. Right? I mean, yes, they're getting like 47-year-old Tom Brady. Okay, fine. It's a geriatric thing at this point. But still, I want to see if the Steelers team can do it, and I want to see them do it against Tom Brady, and it's going to be in Pittsburgh. Sign me up.
All right. Well, we're going to start the second half of the season, and it's hard to say second half of the season when there's 17 games, but it is what it is. So we got to roll with the punches.
Well, you got to remember the Steelers tie at least one game every year.
Well, so, that's
in all honesty, this is
that's true.
So the second half is started off hosting the New Orleans Saints, and then they host the Bengals. Then Pittsburgh heads to Indy to face my Colts, and then finish off that month run going to Atlanta. Circle me a game here, Tony.
I mean, I can't come on your show and not pick the Monday Night Football matchup, Steelers and Colts in Indianapolis, of course. And, and for me, this actually is a fun matchup because a couple of years ago, I got myself in trouble on Locked On Steelers by saying that Matt Ryan back in 2017 had a better year. 2018 had a better year than Ben Roethlisberger did. This is a year that Ben threw for 5,000 yards, but it was more of an accumulation of yards based on attempts, not by efficiency purposes. Well, Steeler fans were not happy with me about that, and that's I've kind of lived that, as this kind of Matt Ryan fanboy for all these years. And so I love it. Matt Ryan on the Colts now against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Sure. Sign me up for that. It'll be an interesting matchup for sure. And Matt Ryan against this defense, we will see how he does.
And your defense versus that Jonathan Taylor fella.
Woo,
right.
Yeah, well, you want to test your run defense. There's your test right there. Yeah. Maybe I'm not looking forward to this one as much now that you put it that way.
And the thing is, with the Colts fan base, I mean, at least the older fan base, we have some demons to exercise because we seem to remember a couple AFC games there in the playoffs that did not quite pan out the way. Like when Jerome Bettis fumbled the ball there on the goal line, I was like, oh, yeah, and then literally talk about a roller coaster of emotions. So, yeah, that'd be nice to hopefully be on the, at least from my point of view, be on the upside of winning that one.
Well, it's like the last time we played Pittsburgh, if I remember correctly, we had to bring in Brian Hoyer in the fourth quarter, and he pretty much gave the entire game away. Right. It's like, here, Minka, pick six this bad boy for 97 yards, So, yeah, there's a little bit of demons for the Colts to, try to get rid of out there.
Now that you start bringing this matchup, there was also Andrew Luck versus Ben, where Ben threw 6 touchdowns. They laid 50 on him. Not to bring up bad memories again. And then if you want to bring up more bad memories, I believe Matt Hasselbeck started a game on Sunday Night Football in Pittsburgh, and Antonio Brown ran up the score by returning a punt for a touchdown very late in that game. The game was already over at that point. So, yeah, for you guys, definitely. This is a revenge game for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, not to mention the dropped touchdown in the AFC Championship back. Oh my goodness, what was that, like 98, 95? Yeah. 95. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I had just watched the Steelers a year prior. I was like 9 years old at the time, but still, I had just watched the Steelers a year prior lose to Stan Humphries and the San Diego Chargers in the AFC Championship game. So at that point, I'll take it however I can get it. Maybe he caught it, maybe he didn't. It's too bad they didn't have replay at the time.
Finishing off the second half of the season, we have 5 games. And they're all really you can't finish tougher than this right here. Loyalist, you're gonna give us the second half pick as soon as I mention the Ravens go to the Steelers, then the Steelers go to Carolina. They may be better than you expect this year. The Raiders, who I have winning the AFC West, a lot of people see that as a what? But
hot take.
Pretty big hot take. But I see it. And then the Steelers go to Baltimore, just 3 weeks after they hosted them prior, and then finish off the year with the Browns and Steelers. Give me a game second half of the year, Loyalist.
I mean, you cannot talk about the Steelers and not sit there and look at that Ravens in their newly named stadium there. It used to be Heinz Field. It was Acrisure or something.
Acrisure, yeah. It rolls right off the tongue.
Yeah. But
great Michigan-based company. Great Michigan-based company.
Yes.
But like I said, I just can't. I love. I mean, the 2.5 decades of just matchups that these two teams have presented. I understand that, Baltimore's in a little bit different place than where the Steelers are, but still, I that's one of those games where you can just throw all the facts out of the window. This is just about blood, sweat, tears, heart, and who wants it the most. So, yeah, that first Ravens game would be interesting to see.
All right. Finishing off the year, the last 5 games, Tony, give me one to circle.
Yeah, I mean, I want it to be that Cleveland game at the end of the year because Cleveland has all these high hopes, and I would just love once again to watch the Steelers crush those hopes as they did last year when Baker Mayfield, by the way, quit. He quit right after that game. For those of you who don't remember, Baker Mayfield quit the team in the post-game press conference to that final game against the Steelers. No, it's got to be the Ravens game. Let's do the one in Heinz or Acrisure. Nothing screams blue collar like a fintech company out of Michigan. Yeah, I mean that's really a blue collar. Yeah, just right. It's a Steel City, baby. Let's go with that. Let's go with the Baltimore game. The Steelers have had a lot of success against Lamar Jackson. Ben Roethlisberger had a lot of success against Lamar Jackson. Ben Roethlisberger was actually undefeated against Lamar, but this is Ben's not going to be there anymore. And that Ravens team is going to be, they're going to be very good this year, and they're going to be dangerous because they're going to have a massive massive chip on their shoulder based on what happened a year ago with all the players going down with injury. That's a good team, well-coached team. They're loaded front to back. So maybe I'm digging my own grave here by saying I'm excited to watch these two games against Baltimore. But like you said, this is a huge rivalry. I love it, and I would love to see the Steelers win either of those games.
Absolutely. Now, for those of you who are having a hard time with the stadium name, I was still, to this day, occasionally calling it Three Rivers. Okay.
Okay.
So just don't worry. All right.
It's only going to take a decade and a half, but we'll get it.
It will never. But Heinz is so iconic. I mean, they had the ketchup bottles and everything. Like, it will never not be called Heinz. I will always call it Heinz. No one's ever going to actually call it Acrisure.
Well, we thought that same thing with the Hoosier Dome, and when it became RCA Dome for Indy,
True.
And people still called it Hoosier Dome, even though it was, but it kind of RCA ended up becoming, it's kind of imprinted on you after a few years, and
yeah,
they just have to. They're just going to have to start calling it the AC or something like that, though. They got to
the A field.
The first time I hear a kid call it Acrisure Stadium is the first time I'm going to say kids these days. That's when I know I'm old. When I hear a kid say Acrisure, no, kid, let me tell you. Back in my day.
All right, so we're not going to give an actual record for the season. We're going to go floor, ceiling. What we think the team's floor will be, what we think the team's ceiling can be, and this is taking into consideration that the team stays generally healthy with most of their important players, okay? Which this is the NFL, and we know you can just take that thought and throw it right out a window, right? So I'm going to let you go last, Tony.
Sure.
That way you can sit down. You probably already thought about it a little bit, but I'm still going to put the suspense out there for those of you watching or listening right now. Loyalist, give me the floor and ceiling and why.
Okay, this was hard for me because, as you know, I'm a huge Mike Tomlin fan. I like Brian Flores. 15 years of not having a losing record. I mean, these are all hard things to sit there and look at. But when I look at this team and I look at the schedule, I'm just not sure if this year's, if Tomlin does it this year, if he can sit there and keep that winning record, I think that is going to be an outstanding coaching job. And I don't think that it's not that he can't do it, but it's like, what is the quarterback play going to be? Because, the last couple of years, Roethlisberger wasn't the Roethlisberger of old. The play had dropped off, but he still had a command of the offense. He still knew that offense in and out. He could adjust and stuff. Well, Trubisky, Rudolph, Pickett, none of these guys have that. So for me, I think the floor is somewhere around that 6 win. But I do think that if Tomlin does what Tomlin does and this organization performs above, I think maybe a 10 win is the ceiling. So I'm sort of in that 6 to 10 win window. And I'm hoping for Tomlin's sake, because I think that's an awesome record. I'd like to sit there and see like a 9-7-1, or, I got to throw that tie in there, but, see something that just keeps that record, because that's an amazing record.
So my floor ceiling, I'm kind of close to where you're at. Being that I don't have a whole lot of faith, the same with Tony, about the quarterbacks right now. I think Mitch Trubisky is going to be the starter. I think Mitch is better than people give him credit for. I think he was just on a really bad team with a coach that didn't know properly how to use him properly, plus awful offensive line. I mean, awful. That Chicago offensive line was terrible. Now, you go look what Mitch did last year when he came in a few times. He looked pretty darn good. Now, granted, the team he was on was pretty darn good too. So, but at the same time, I got to say that Mitch or Kenny is probably going to be an upgrade over the two quarterbacks they were flipping around a couple years ago for a season. They didn't have a losing season then, right? With Mason Rudolph, and I can't remember who the other guy was that started a couple games. They kept flipping back and forth between who was going to be starting there. So I think, yes, it could be an 8 and 9 floor, but I think this Steelers defense is good. I mean, it is good. It is aggressive. It is opportunistic. It can get at, if there's a team out there that can make any quarterback in the NFL scared, it's this defense. Okay. Especially when TJ Watt's out there on the field. And we already know there's a reason why, he's got so many votes for a certain award last year. Right. I think 12 wins is around their ceiling.
All right.
That's ceiling.
I'm gonna sound like a hater now. Now I'm going to Tony the hater comes out. 12. 12's not. I go back and forth on this all the time because, and you guys both brought it up. What if they upgraded that quarterback? Right? Like I don't think people realize how bad Ben Roethlisberger was, especially last season. Yes, the name on the back of the jersey said Roethlisberger, but the play on the field was so opposite of what we had seen from him. Go back to when he was a rookie, right? And he's running around like a maniac. You saw, none of that. But then even his willingness to throw over the middle of the field, gone, right? Everything he wanted to do was quick, really short throws, stuff that defenses could sit on. The deep ball was just, your basic 9 route down the sideline. And that's all he wanted to throw deep. It was, there was no mixing it up when it came to the passing game, no play action whatsoever. But the thing I'll give him a ton of credit for, Roethlisberger, is that he was so clutch. And this team really has been clutch over the past couple of years. I think they only lost one game last year where it was a 1-score game. They played in like 7 of them. They had a ridiculous record in 1-score games. He was clutch in those games. So can the quarterback that they bring in, whether it's Trubisky or Pickett, can they be better on 1st and 2nd down? Yeah, I think they can be better on 1st and 2nd down. Can they be better on 3rd down? Can they be better in that 2-minute situation? Game on the line. We need a 1st down to put this game away. Are you going to be there in that spot? Red zone situations, late in the football game. Are you going to be there in that spot? That's where I have my question mark. I'll say the floor for me, the floor is like really, really low you did the injury thing, which I appreciate because this team is a Najee Harris injury away from brutal season. Who wants to watch Benny Snell as your lead back? Not me. Anthony McFarland. Yeah. Okay. Great. No, thank you. So I'll say the floor for me is 6 wins. Oh, I'm gonna copy you, Loyalist, because my ceiling is 10. Yeah, but that's where I am. I think this is gonna be a really hard year for Mike Tomlin to do his little I've never had a losing season thing. I liked it when he did the tie last year. It was like a protest vote. It was like his protest. I'm still. You don't think I can go 8-8 with a 17-game season? Watch.
All right. Well, this was great. Thank you so much for joining. Hope to have you on again sometime soon. Probably mid-season sometime, right?
Sounds good to me. Yeah. Let's do it.
Absolutely. So until next time, I'm Lawrence Owen. That's Loyalist. Again, guest Tony Serino.
Got it. Nailed it.
Got it this time. And as usual, have a good one.
Just because a player's not a household name doesn't mean we can't make him a household name.